With that, I'm going to pass it over to Gina Plate, who is our Senior Vice President of Advocacy and CCSA's Special Education Expert.
Great, thank you so much. So welcome all. Thanks for joining our Special Ed Guidance and Support webinar. My name is Gina Plate, and like you heard, I oversee the special ed work here at the California Charter Schools Association. So thanks so much for taking the time to join us. I am definitely humbled by all of the expertise that is on the call today, especially given that many of you are on spring break. We love that the virtual option allows us to stay connected. So thanks for your time. I will say that there's been some funny moments as most of us are spending the better part of our days on Zoom or video calls. So it's a good reminder. We're all human. There might be kids in the background. There might be animals. While I won't say that it's been easy, that has added a fun element to some of the calls. So you'll remember back, gosh, about 3 weeks ago when the COVID-19 public health crisis began, our governor, our state superintendent of public instruction, our state director of special ed, and others recommended that you stay home, you transition to distance learning, and do your best at meeting the needs of each and every child. So our leaders encouraged us all to be people first and walk alongside families in this process. Don't be afraid in this moment where there were so many questions, and what we heard consistently was, do what your families need, we've got your back. So let's not overstate the fact that at moments this has felt really daunting. And for many that also have families at home, this has been a tall order, but our schools across the state, and in this moment specifically, we're going to talk about our charter schools, have jumped into gear and shown an incredible amount of resiliency. They're developing plans for serving all kids, including those kids with disabilities, and that's what we're going to focus on here today. At CCSA, our role has been to identify the programs. We've been acting as maybe the air traffic controller or the station conductor, whatever analogy you like. Identifying those places that have emerging best practices, taking the info in and figuring out a way to report it out to you. And in a way that's not complicated, trying to make it as easy as possible. So right out of the gate, I want to let you know that our CEO, Myrna Castrejón, and our board made the decision to open up our website. So the passwords have been removed. All of our content is publicly available now. And so before we get started, I want to point you to a couple of things on the website that you can dive into later. So first, you should be seeing on your screen now our COVID-19 Support Center. So this is where you'll find all of the executive orders. We have some fantastic partners across the state, including Young, Minnie, and Core, who've done a couple webinars for us. You'll see their webinars up here. You'll see, like I said, the legal guidance. And as you scroll further down, we have a Q&A. And the Q&A is set up in a way that makes it easy for you to navigate. If you'll go back up to, oh, thanks. If you'll go back up to the top, I want to point you just to a couple of pages on this support center. So the first one is our school meals program. And this is a live map that will show you all of the places across the state where families can pick up meals. And it is updated in real time. So you have all of the details that you can just share with your families for your region on how they can get food. Feel free, like I said, to cut and paste, send this around. We want to make sure that families are getting the food that's available. If you'll go back up to the top, you'll see the next tab is the distance learning tab. And our schools are putting together their distance learning plans. And so what you'll see on this page, as we've talked to leaders across the state, some elements of what should be in a plan, some sample plans from schools, a planning tool so that you can walk through it with your staff, and then again, an FAQ. So again, trying to make this Easy to use, easy to navigate. I don't know about you guys, but there are literally hundreds of resources out there in the world, hundreds of good resources out there in the world. And so rather than just posting them here, we've tried to pull out the information that is resonating for leaders and make it user-friendly. And then I'm very excited to show you the special ed page that is now up on the website. And again, this is set up to demonstrate, well, it offers the guidance that has been shared by the State Department of Ed and our US Department of Ed. So you can scroll through and get all of the recent executive orders and guidance documents. As you scroll down, we've created a framework that you can use to guide your engagement with families. And again, this is going to be individualized for every organization. There's not a one-size-fits-all way to engage with your families. So, but this gives you a framework to use. And then as you continue to scroll down, it walks you through a process of engaging your team on putting your special ed plan together. And what we are encouraging folks to do is be intentional, decide what your plan is, engage with families, let them know what your plan is, and then make modifications to it as you get feedback back from your families. So, and then again, there's also an FAQ on this page that our legal team keeps live. So literally as hundreds of questions have come to us, we are keeping them posted on this website. You can continue to email us at the info@ccsa.org email address, and we will process the questions and get them up on here. The last part I will point out to you is that there's a tips and ideas from charter leaders. This is something that we will be updating with all of the feedback that all of you are sending to us. So, you know, like I said, I am humbled by the expertise that is represented on this call as I see folks logging in. So please know that CCSA is, again, trying to share out as much as we possibly can, not just to our charter school partners, but our traditional district colleagues across the state. And we will keep adding more and more information as we get it. So that was a lot of information. Again, just want to make sure that if you have questions about the website, if you have questions we haven't addressed, that feel free to email me. All right, a couple more points before I hand it over to our esteemed panelists. So this webinar is going to be split into 3 different parts. So first, you're going to hear from our State Director of Special Ed, Kristen Wright, who has led us with expertise in providing guidance around what the state and federal laws say. And we're so appreciative that Kristen could join us this morning. Then you're going to hear from 2 of our charter school leaders from 2 of our charter schools that have taken the directive from our state leaders. And you know, that directive has been do your best, right? Here's the state and federal law, do your best and individualize it, operationalize it, and we're going to show you what that looks like as they have worked with their families and students. So welcome, charter folks. And then also so excited to hear from David Tostin, Associate Superintendent at the El Dorado County Office of Ed, and Janice Kwan, SELPA Director at our El Dorado County Office of Ed Charter SELPA. And they're going to share a bit about what they're seeing across the state, and then they're going to facilitate us in a Q&A. So we're going to pack a lot in. This is an exciting topic. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Kristen Wright. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Can you see me here?
Yep.
All right. So good morning, and thank you, Gina and CCSA, for allowing me to join you for a few minutes this morning. Like so many of you, we have also been catapulted at the California Department of Education into a new world of distance learning, which is not our typical way of conducting business. We are learning how to use Microsoft Teams and becoming more proficient at Zoom meetings. it is taking time, just like for all of our parents and families and teachers, as we're having to be very patient with ourselves and our coworkers as we adjust to straddling the state work along with our roles as parents in this new at-home sharing a space environment. So we have heard from so many of you in the charter sector who've offered to help and share and advise, as many of you have been working from a distance learning framework for some time. We are going to lean on you for that advice more than ever. And thank you, Gina and CCSA, for opening up your website with all of your incredible resources. And thanks to a lot of the charters who have reached out to say, we also have resources to help you. You don't have to reinvent all these things. We know you have a lot of lessons learned already. So please keep sharing. And I know some of you are working with us on the work group that the governor and the superintendent discussed a few weeks ago. We have almost 200 people that have been working in 10 different groups and are part of what is going to turn into our weekly webinars. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So I'm really here today to offer some words of encouragement, to say thank you, to be sitting here with a lot of humility as I too try to work within a new homeschool environment, and say thank you for all that you're already doing to support students and families. I think, you know, we're truly better together. Can you still hear me, Gina? Because my computer's saying that my internet connection is unstable. Am I still on?
Yeah, you went in and out a little bit, but we got it.
Okay. So even in non-pandemic times, we know our students with disabilities require an incredibly individualized approach. There is no one size fits all. So I think we apply that same idea that there is no perfect roadmap to serving students with disabilities through distance learning either. There is will and collaboration, and especially partnership with families, and so much room for innovation and out-of-the-box thinking right now. So IEPs as they currently stand may not be able to be fully actualized in a distance learning environment. We know that. So as you're transitioning to distance learning, the most critical thing is that you're working with families to develop sort of a contingency of what's going to happen during this time. There's never been anything more critical than to be working with our families to come to some kind of agreements about not only what works for the child, but what works for the parents and what they're able to do, what works with the technology that they have available and all that. So the most important thing is to first make sure that our families are feeling supported, that they have their basic needs met. We may be the only folks who are reaching out to some families. So their teacher or the administrator may be the only person who's checking on them. And that's a critical role. So for our students with more significant disabilities, not having those physical supports available is extremely challenging. And we recognize it, I feel it too. It puts a lot of demand on the parent and caregiver to take on these new roles that they haven't had to take on before in different ways. Just like our students without disabilities, our kids don't necessarily see mom and dad and grandma or brother and sister as a teacher. We have heard from many families, and I know you work with a lot of the families as well, that may have multiple children in a home and one computer, and a child with significant disabilities, and one person that's taking care of everyone. In those situations, again, it's going to really take some creative thinking and a lot of communication with families to get something in place to give that child access during distance learning times. So right now it's important that before we try to dive into this full, homeschooling model schedule, we give ourselves permission to make sure that the families are safe and have their basic needs met. Secondly, that access to some kind of technology. In some cases, it's just a phone, and in some cases, there is no phone. And so we've talked to schools and districts who are trying to get their families phone cards and technology, even to make contact over the phone. So we've heard this is still a challenge, and I know our state agencies are working really hard with you all to try to close that technology gap. And third, we want to meet families where they are and really work together to put in place some type of distance learning plan or something that allows their child with a disability access their education. If your school is offering education to everyone, it's as you know, critically important to make sure that every single child has access to their education from that equity lens. And this will look incredibly different depending on each individual circumstance for families. You know, recognizing we are in a global pandemic, and we know that IDEA is still in effect to ensure that we don't forget about our students with disabilities and make sure that they have access to their education too. But there are going to be some adjustments, and as parents and educators, we all have to understand that we're going to have to try to do the best we can, and it's not going to be perfect. The most important thing is that we can continue to keep that line of communication open and just working really closely with our families and not being scared to think out of the box in this situation, and don't let sort of the perfection aspect be the enemy of good. So I know there's a lot of questions about special education, really specific questions that are on people's minds and worries. We live our lives on very specific timelines and requirements in special ed, I know. But right now, I think we need to focus on helping our students and families, making sure everyone has access and is supported, and that the health and safety and welfare of our students is top of mind. We will be working with you around the timelines and all those sorts of things. But we are continuing to, at the department, stay open. We're continuing to move forward. We're trying to, in the same way you are, think of our work as not halted, but we're moving to a virtual sort of platform and continuing to do our work. So again, we'll be doing everything we can to provide you the most flexibility in being able to meet the needs of your students with disabilities. And if you're feeling that you have barriers, or you want to offer some suggestions on how you can do your work more or better, please reach out to us and let us know. So Gina mentioned that we have at the department in the special ed division put out guidance. We have a couple sets of FAQs that we've put out so far. We will continue to add to that the FAQ, specifically the one about students with disabilities. We will also be adding to the distance learning overall guidance with more resources and other things that are coming out of the work groups that we've been convening. We will also be hosting weekly webinars. Many of you were on the webinar last Thursday. We'll be hosting a webinar this Thursday focused on engaging families, and then we'll be having webinars every single week. So we'll make sure to send out through Gina and your listservs at CCSA so everyone has access to those webinars. Finally, please just know that we are here in solidarity with you. We know this is not easy for anyone. And, you know, I think us having a lot of patience for each other and knowing that as a state, we are in solidarity with each other. And again, if you have any specific issues that you're worried about that are top of mind, please reach out. You can always contact me, or you can contact our SED info at cde.ca.gov, which is on the websites that Gina also said that she posted on, I think, the CCSA website. So again, thank you for all that you're doing, and you know, look for more guidance from us coming out in the next week. And in the meantime, be well, and thank you for all that you're doing for our students and families.
Great. Thanks so much, Kristen. We really appreciate you and the others at CDE who have been right out there in front to lead, to support the LEAs as we all work through this transition to distance learning. And just reiterate the fact that you have said, others, including our superintendent, has said, focus on the needs of families first, and we will have your back. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for acknowledging that that is a scary, scary way to think about serving kids with disabilities when we are guided by, like you said, timelines and wanting to be compliant. And so that walking that fine line right now, just appreciate the support that the department has offered.
Thanks.
So it does appear that we have exceeded the max number of folks for the webinar. So while we work on expanding that, if you are a CCSA staff person and mysteriously get bumped off, don't be offended. We will be recording this. We'll make sure you get the information. So for those of you that are listening and can't yet see, we are working on it. Okay, now I want to transition us over to hearing from our schools. So first, want to welcome Casey Taylor and Mary Tickle from Achieve Charter Schools in Northern California. You'll remember Casey and her team from the leadership role they took and continue to take with LEAs across Butte County, given the fires up there in the region. So let me hand it over to you, Casey and Mary. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, friends. I was just wishing that I could actually see all of you, but thanks for joining us today. My name is Casey Taylor, Executive Director of Achieve Charter School, and I'm going to give a high-level view of how we're supporting an entire school in the middle of crisis, and then I'll turn it over to Mary, our Special Ed Director and Mental Health Coordinator, to talk about some details and specifically how we're serving students with IEPs. I'm going to share my screen here. Well,
nice.
Here we go. So Achieve Charter School, we're a K-8 school originally located in Paradise, but after the 2018 Camp Fire, our town was completely destroyed and we are relocated to a church facility in the neighboring city of Chico. Last school year, we built an entire school campus on that church's ball field, and we opened the school year this school year on that campus. This year, we're serving 215 students. 7% of our students have IEPs, and we run a full inclusion special education model. We are a member of the El Dorado Charter SELPA, and we've been in operation since 2005. We also opened a high school in 2018, right before the fire, and we've had to put that on hold until we can return to Paradise. We are also a seat-based program, and we normally have 236 students. So because there's so many parallels happening right now between what we worked through during the campfire and what everyone is working through right now with COVID, I'm going to share a quick overview of some of the lessons learned for providing academic and emotional support to an entire school. So at Achieve, in blue sky times, what we have now learned is time where we're not in a crisis. Achieve is committed to developing a multi-tiered system of support and making sure that our students don't fall through the cracks academically or emotionally. So to do that, we've pushed as many of our tier 2 supports into tier 1 for every student. For example, we run a daily morning assembly with the entire student body and staff to celebrate students, set expectations, deliver focused social emotional instruction. This develops a shared language across the school and sets the tone for the day. There's music, it's fun, it's encouraging, it makes students and staff feel happy to be at school and welcomed. This is especially important when students are coming to school from a stressful home situation. We also have personalized learning plans for every student. So that's basically an SST that's developed with the student, teacher, and parent before the school year starts. It documents the student's learning style, achievement data, additional supports they've had, and identifies an academic or social emotional goal for the student to work towards for the trimester. The plan is revised after every trimester or sooner and adjusted with the teacher, parent, and student. At the end of the year, that teacher meets with the student's new tutor from the coming year and they share successes. That personalized learning plan follows students through their time at Achieve. And then like many of you, we provide a reading intervention to every kindergartner and first grader, pushing our resource teacher and paraprofessionals into those classrooms to run groups with all students so we don't miss anybody. So these systems would end up being crucial to supporting a school of students, families, and staff dealing with a community-wide tragedy. In 2018, the Camp Fire all but destroyed the entire town of Paradise, leaving 100% of our students homeless and 90% of our staff, administrators, and board of directors homeless. Our entire county lost 3 weeks of instruction because of the smoke in the air, and then the Paradise charter schools reopened in Chico churches without any school supplies, with an entire student body of staff, students and staff with high levels of trauma who were not emotionally available to learn or to teach. So while school was closed for those 3 weeks, our morning assembly took to Facebook Live with our school principal, Steve Wright, holding morning assemblies at 8:30 on Facebook from wherever he happened to be that morning. He was at a relative's house, he was at a hotel, and families joined in as they were scattered across the country, unsure of what their future looked like. That sense of connectedness and hopefulness was so powerful. It was the thing that a lot of our families were just holding on to as some bit of normalcy into their lives during that time. Also, our personalized learning plans took to the phones with teachers calling every student, finding out where they were, what they needed, and what if they would be able to come back if we were reopening in Chico. So when we reopened in Chico, 100% of our students needed Tier 3 support. And over the course of that year, 90 students moved to other cities and states just because there wasn't room for everyone to stay in Chico. So we backfilled with 70 students who were from Paradise, who had been on our waiting list, who were still in the area. But at that time, our students had lost their homes, their town, the families had lost jobs, our new students had lost their schools, and we had all lost so many friends who had moved away. It was this really hard, sad time with a lot of loss. It is a little equal to what we're listening to government officials and our health officials warning us about could happen with COVID. So we need to be ready to support our students, families, and staff dealing with loss and uncertainty at a school-wide level. So it's during these times where community is so important. It is a charter school's secret sauce. It is why families bring their students to us. It's why our teachers want to work for us. We have used that sense of community to support people like never before, and I know that charter schools are specifically set up to do the same kind of thing across the state. We also know that partnerships are crucial. So during the fire, other charter schools, our County Office of Ed, our SELPA, CCSA, and so many more jumped in to support us. And I'm certainly having flashbacks now as I see this happening on a larger level with COVID. I see us all banding together, sharing ideas and resources and emotional support. So last year after the fire and this year, all of our students need this Tier 3 support. It's not just social emotional learning now happening during the morning assembly and in classrooms, but now it's trauma and crisis counseling happening during that morning assembly in classrooms with small groups, with individual students, with parents, and with teachers. And Mary will speak a little bit more about this in just a minute. But those Tier 3 supports for every student also look like social emotional goals being the #1 priority in our personalized learning plans, with a very slow move back to academics. We also kept all of our support staff on board, even with a smaller number of students. We even kept the support staff from our high school that's not serving students to increase the ratio of adults to students in our K-8 because of that additional emotional support that students would need, and also the academic support students would need as we try to backfill holes from missing so much school and dealing with so much trauma. So now, here we are, not only working to push that Tier 2 and 3 support to all students, but now we're doing it remotely. So our principal is back to Facebook Live. Every morning, he's running assemblies at 8:30, and he's providing so much emotional support for students, but he's actually primarily speaking to parents right now and coaching them through this new normal, really helping to refine goals for what the rest of this year looks like, talking about using tools like flexibility and perseverance. This is on the Achieve Charter School Facebook page. You should check it out. It's adorable. We have alumni from all over the country tuning in just because it's a really great message of hope. And then our personalized learning plans are being adjusted for distance learning now. Teachers are back on the phone. Phones or FaceTime, talking about what learning looks like at home with learning styles of students, with family situations, and the best ways to communicate with them, what their specific needs are around technology and supplies. And then we're really changing the focus of what learning looks like, from what we learn to how we learn. We know our students are going to have academic holes again when we return, as parents are not content experts, and they're losing their minds over 4th grade content. So we're looking at focusing on those softer skills now, working on rubrics for students and parents to evaluate not just what did they learn, but how they learned it. What obstacles did you have? Did you persist? What tools are you using? Did you ask for help? Did you take a break? And then try to think about solving problems in different ways. And hopefully we can use this time at home to bring new learning that will support the entire family. So those are a few lessons learned from when we are working with an entire community in trauma in uncertain times. My staff said, well, we learned how to deliver our program to traumatized students out of a Sunday school classroom with no supplies. We can certainly learn how to do that with our families in a remote way. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Tickle to talk about some details of that.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little more in detail about some of the emotional supports that we put into place after the fire and what we're doing currently. It's been pretty tricky trying to help a whole school, including staff and parents, bounce back after the tragedy that we experienced. And the other thing that we should mention is that in Butte County, we have one of the highest ACEs scores across the state. That's the adverse childhood experiences. And so our families and our students are particularly struggling at this point to deal with yet another tragedy that they're having to bounce back from. So that's been very difficult. So some of the social emotional supports that we've put into place, one of the things is the support team of counselors, including myself. We have 2 fire recovery counselors that have been provided through the Butte County Office of Education. We also have counselors through the Butte County Behavioral Health who come on campus and see students. Up to 18.6% of our students either have been seen in the past or are currently being seen. And right now we're continuing to provide those services remotely through different methods. Also, our rate of suicidal ideation skyrocketed last year after the fire. And this has continued to be higher this school year than it was in the past. And so we put procedures into place to be able to address that concern. All of our counselors are trained in suicide risk assessment, and we make parent contacts. We have handouts for parents that have information about how they can help their students address these concerns. We also make referrals to outside agencies to help the families to cope and the students. And then once we've done a suicide risk assessment, we do regular check-ins with that student, whether or not they've gotten services, counseling services outside of our school. We still check in with them regularly to help meet their needs. So over the past year and 5 months, we've laid a lot of groundwork to try to meet the emotional needs that Casey was referring to, particularly in our middle school. We knew that we needed to do something middle school wide. These teenagers are not likely to come forward and admit that they need extra help. And so we needed to do something with them that wasn't singling them out, but also helping to build resilience in them. And we knew that one of the most effective ways to help the students is to help their parents. And so some of the things that we've done to help parents is we've done different parent sessions. Soon after the fire, we did a session talking about trauma recovery, what were typical behaviors that they could expect in their children, and what were symptoms that they could notice in their children and in themselves that indicated that they needed extra help. We also put together a list right before the summer started. We put together a list of available summer camps that had discounted rates for fire survivors. And then for students who don't necessarily relate to a one-on-one counseling situation like talk therapy, we put together a list of other alternative type therapies that were available to students and to parents as well. That included things like acupuncture and equine therapy, yoga, mindfulness, different things like that. So we put together this list and sent it out to all parents so that they had some resources to use over the summer. When we came back to school, we found that some of our students had bounced back and were ready to learn, but we still had a number of students that were really struggling. And as we approached the anniversary date of November 8th, we knew that we needed to do something with families that would help bring them together and bring them together with our school community, but would also be appropriate for a kindergarten through 8th grade population. So we talked a lot about that. And what we came up with was something that we called Family Day, where we had 13 different stations throughout our school where families came. A lot of parents took time off work and came in, spent time together with their kids, going to these different stations. We had things like a therapy dog, we had art activities, we had community service opportunities to serve the church that we were hosted by. We also had a lot of outdoor games, just fun things for people to do. We had rock painting where they could write a message, and we have those displayed in our campus. We also had a quiet space with aromatherapy and a pizza lunch. This winter, we did a series of team building activities to build resilience with our middle schoolers. And then we did a parent session about resilience. when our counselors call to update the parents on their progress on the progress of the students, then they also end up doing counseling with the parents. And during morning assembly, we had discussions with our middle schoolers about what suicidal ideation is and what to do if a friend is talking about suicide and what are the signs of depression, and just helping them to recognize those things in themselves and their friends, and then teaching them to go to an adult for help. And because of that, we've had a number of students who have come forward and reported their friends, talking about these things, and we've been able to get the help to those kids that they needed. And recently, last week, I did my first Zoom suicide risk assessment because a student had reported to a teacher that her friend was making threats. So we feel grateful about the things that the students are doing to help their friends. And then additionally, our support team is working on a series of 1 to 2 minute video clips for parents so that they can get small usable chunks of information about mental health, behavioral issues, and then we're going to include a strategy or an intervention idea with each clip. And those clips will be available on our Facebook page and website. Okay, so preparing to bring our educational programs online. One of the first things that we did when we talked about going online was to have all of our teachers, including our special education staff, reach out to our parents. As has been mentioned already, we might be the only people reaching out to these parents, and they're extremely stressed with everything that's happening right now. And so we made an individual call to each family. Some families got multiple calls because if they had siblings in the school, or if they have a special education student, then we just went ahead and called them 2 or 3 times to check in with them and make sure that they're doing okay, that they have all of their needs met. So we checked on their health and safety. We checked on their access to computers, and just asked them if they had any needs that we could connect them maybe with the church or other agencies to try to help them to meet their needs. Teachers also gave out their private cell phone numbers to the parents, and we started a spreadsheet that all teachers could access so that we could log those parent contacts, and then we have a column for any needs, so that way our principal and others can check that list and try to help meet the needs of the families. We also had to design our programs around the multiple factors that we've been talking about. It's not just about the learning needs of the kids at this point, it's also about their emotional needs. We had to consider things like their level of attention, their level of independent functioning, if the parent is able to instruct, if they're even home with the kids. Some kids are with older siblings or with family members or babysitters, and so we had to factor that in. And then we also had to look at what essential concepts we could narrow our curriculum down to so that people aren't feeling overwhelmed with what they're expected to do at home. Because we have an inclusion program, our general education and special education programs are completely intertwined. And so our teachers all have a different look to their programs. And so we all met and talked together about what are our ideas? Could we brainstorm different ways to put these programs into place? And so we came up with kind of a list of different options and different ways that people envision online learning looking. And so these are some of the things that most of our teachers are doing. They're using a combination of either a daily or a weekly schedule of the work to be completed, and that's usually emailed out to parents either over the weekend or at the beginning of the week. Some teachers have put together packets that have art supplies and different things for the kids to use at home, or worksheets for them to do, and the parents have been able to come pick those things up during breakfast or lunch pickup that's happening in the parking lot of our school. Teachers have done tutorial videos, either online or recorded it and emailed it out to parents. They have done direct Zoom instruction or phone instruction with individual students. They've also done Zoom meetups for whole classes, which has been fun for a lot of the kids. And then students are being asked to do presentations. Some of the older kids are doing presentations on Zoom as well. We've become very proficient and are grateful to Zoom for the service that they provide to us. Also, our middle school teachers are using an online curriculum called Edmentum, and we've received support from that with some of our local charters that are using that curriculum as well, that have done training with us and shared resources with us, Pivot Charter School in particular. So some of the things that they're learning with Edmentum are English, science, history, and some of the electives. And the program has different levels so that we can individualize it for our special education students. They have a prescriptive level where the student takes a pre-test and can test out of certain concepts in the program. And then they also have an academic support level. The students can also be placed into a modified grade level. For example, an 8th grade student could be put into a 7th grade level program if needed. That can help fill the gaps the student might have and also encourage independent learning. Our math teacher, though, decided that he wanted to continue with the CPM math program that he was teaching, and he is doing instructional videos for the students. And then he's our local tech guy as well. He also set up a program called Discord, which is like a gaming platform. Kids are all very familiar with it, and it allows them to chat with each other, chat with the teachers. It has individual breakout rooms that you can set up. And so they have a chat room for each of our different subject levels. And then that way the students can attend office hours with the teachers in order to get their questions answered. They can also just socialize and just get general questions answered either from each other or from their teachers. So that's been a really good source of support for the students in the middle school level. We were already using many computer programs throughout our school to support different areas of learning. And so this is a list of some of the programs that we've continued to use. We have Read Live, Lexia, iReady, ST Math, Teach Your Monster to Read, ABC Mouse, Handwriting Without Tears, Spelling City, Prodigy, Epic, Typing Club, and Quizzes, and then Edmentum for the middle school. So parents were given passwords so that the students could continue their progress in the programs. So for our special education programming, we started with sending prior written notice out to all of the parents, just letting them know that the special education programs would be changing. And we sent draft amendment documents to all of the parents before we held an IEP amendment meeting so that we could actually make the changes to the programs. So we drafted a document that included the service pages in the educational setting, sent that out to the parents, and then had a lot of discussion with everybody, including the general education teacher and the additional service providers if the student had related services, and developed individual programs for each of our kids. I've gotten very proficient using Zoom for doing amendment meetings. Oh, and then we also used DocHub to get the electronic signatures, which is something new, and it was a little interesting to figure out. There's some videos that you can learn how to use it, but that way we could collect electronic signatures and move forward with our programming. Okay, so some of the different special education program options that we have considered. We do direct service on Zoom virtually, also by phone call if that's more comfortable for the family, but our education specialist has a schedule of providing those services. We also have some of our paraprofessionals providing direct service to students. We have some kids that were in intervention programs like SIPS or Barton Reading, and we wanted to continue their progress in those programs. So we set up Zoom meetings for the whole group to be able to continue, or if it's individual, but for the students to be able to continue in those reading programs. We also consult directly with parents and have time written into many of our IEPs for the students to consult with the ed specialist on how to provide the accommodations and how to meet the child's needs. We consult with our general education teachers so that they're able to make the accommodations prior to sending out the information to the students. We talked in depth about what each child's accommodations and modifications are so that the parents feel comfortable to be able to implement those themselves. And if they're not comfortable with that, then we do that for them ahead of time. And then we also have our related service providers that are continuing to provide direct service or consultation, including speech and language, occupational therapy, and adapted PE. All right, so next I'm going to share some examples of specific programs for 3 of our different students. The first 2 are for more intensive needs students, and then the last one for a learning disabled child with less intensive needs. So the first is an example of a 2nd grade student who has intellectual disability, has Down syndrome. And in the regular school year, he spends about 70% of his time in general education. He also has increased adult supervision. So for him, we sent home the modified materials that he uses in school. It's a file folder system with different activities for number and letter recognition, sight words, writing his name, some of his IEP goals that are worked on that way. He also does Teacher Monster to Read and ABC Mouse on the computer. And so that he was able to continue with those at home. He does that for pre-reading. And then for handwriting and written language, he uses the Handwriting Without Tears app. And so he's able to do that at home as well. So in order to encourage general education participation, the teacher sends out videos that she makes of herself reading stories to the class, and he's able to participate in those stories, and then his mother can ask him comprehension questions with that. And then a teacher also sends out science activities for the whole class. They would do Science Fridays during the regular school year, and so she's continuing that with the class, and he's able to participate that as well. And then they do weekly Zoom meetings where the whole class gets together, and so he participates in that as well. And he has a paraprofessional that worked closely with him, has for years actually, and so she has stayed in touch with the family and provides support to the parents and to the student. She also prepares new activities as he progresses through his file folder activities. She is able to prepare new activities in consultation with our education specialist. So his program, SPED services, 60 minutes a week consultation with the parent, 30 minutes a week specialized academic instruction for curriculum development. And then he also receives 120 minutes a month of occupational therapy, either consult or direct instruction, and then 40 minutes a week of speech and language services via Zoom. Okay, then we also have an 8th grader with more intensive needs. He has other health impairment and low cognitive ability. And during the regular school year, he has one-on-one assistance a couple of hours a day. And so trying to move that program into an online format was challenging for us. And we did spend probably a couple of hours talking about his needs and meeting with his family and trying to figure out how to meet his needs. So what we came up with is 150 minutes a week of direct service from the ed specialist. She breaks that down 30 minutes a day, Monday through Friday, and tries to spend about half the time working on his math goal and about half the time working on his reading comprehension goal. And then she also does the curriculum development and makes sure that the activities are appropriate, meeting with the general ed teachers and getting things settled for him before they're sent out. He has 60 minutes a week with a paraprofessional helping him with his science and history support. He has time on iReady for math and time on Read Live so that he can continue his reading progress. And then about 15 to 20 minutes a night, he reads aloud with his parent. And we got a list of books from him that he was interested in. One of the things that he shared with us is that after the fire, he lost all his books. And so we had some money that we had received through a grant from, I think, Rotary. And so the teacher used some of those funds to buy books for this particular student, high interest books that could go home to him. And then we encouraged the parents to use Audible at the same time so that he could listen to the stories as he was reading along. And then our history teacher put together a program for him using Brain Pop videos so that he could use the same content that was being taught through Edmentum to his general ed peers, but through these short videos that he could watch repeatedly. And then the teacher put together graphic organizers that would help him to answer questions that go along with each video. And then there's a quiz at the end, and he can use his graphic organizer to help answer the questions on the quiz. And then for science, our teacher put together a program, again, completely individualized, same 8th grade concepts that the other students are using, but hands-on activities that he can do at home to learn about the science concepts. So for example, constructing a roller coaster to learn about force and motion. And then finally, the program of a 5th grade student. He has specific learning disability and less intensive needs academically, but he has a lot of emotional needs. He had a high level of anxiety prior to the fire, but post-fire, his anxiety has continued to worsen almost to the point of being like a post-traumatic stress issue. And so his emotional needs and his family's emotional needs were very important to us, and we needed to make sure that his program was designed around those needs as well. His mother did express to us that she felt unable to teach him and was very anxious about the coronavirus, and so we were working on developing independence for him. Also, they didn't have a computer, but they did have internet, and so our teachers have passed out Chromebooks to all the families that needed them. And I know Casey's also been working on getting funding so that we can make sure that we have proper internet for all of our rural families that don't have sufficient internet. So the program for this student is focused on primarily the reading and the math, although we've included some other subject areas just to a lesser degree. But we put together a list of literature books that could be more individualized for him, because the particular book that they were reading in class was too high of a level and he was struggling with comprehension unless he had one-on-one help. So we have a website that you can enter in the student's reading level, and it produces a list of books that are appropriate for that student. So our ed specialist did that. That way the student could choose a book that he wanted to read, and then his book report and essay could be based on that particular book. And so our ed specialist is working with him with the reading and the comprehension, and then helping him with graphic organizers so that he's able to write the essay at the end of the book. He also was provided with a schedule that focuses on just one subject area a day, so that he wouldn't feel overwhelmed between having to toggle back and forth between different websites and different subject areas. And so this way he could be more focused just on one particular subject. He has a shortened number of tasks that he's asked to do, so that it's about a total of 1.5 hours or 2 hours a day for him to work on the subject areas. And for math, he's able to benefit from the general ed instruction. The teacher's doing instructional videos, so he watches those videos, and then she calls him and does individual support with him one-on-one. The general ed teacher does, in order to meet his math needs. So his overall program looks like 120 minutes a week of the specialized academic instruction, 90 of those minutes spent one-on-one with the special ed teacher. And she's focusing on reading, but also doing some history and science with him. And then the 30 minutes a week of curriculum development. And then he also receives consultation between the parent and the ed specialist, so that she can help support what we're doing at school. And that's all. Thank you.
Casey and Mary, thank you so much. I think this is the level of detail that I know folks are just appreciating hearing, so that they can get ideas, they can get reinforcement around what they're doing. So thank you for that level of detail. Also, if we don't have your personalized learning plan up on our website, I'd love a sample of those. We've gotten some comments, people asking for them. And then love that your Facebook Live is available, so we can see your morning meeting. So thank you both so much for the work that you're doing, and time sharing the detail of the program.